So now we're going to start part 2 of this segment on this build. So we're going to be doing the body lift. We've already got our front and all the right side down. We're going to do it one side at a time. So you definitely want to make sure that you get your radiator drop brackets and your fan shroud unbolted from the radiator, because if you break that, they can get pretty pricey. So essentially what you want to do is you want to get your brackets put on. They've got studs that get hammered into your drop brackets. They go in. It'll tell you in your instructions what you need to disconnect and what you need to move to allow for clearance for your body to be raised up a full 2 inches to be set down on the new pucks. So we're going to go ahead and get to the rest of our assembly of our drop brackets and go ahead and get our body lift installed. Before you take your body up in the air off of your body mounts, you definitely want to make sure you take loose the 4 screws holding your filler neck in. We've already removed those and it pulls straight out. Now that that's detached from this, you can now go up and you don't have to worry about breaking any of your lines. We got a little bit of a gap right there, so we'll have to suck it in just a little bit. It can be persuaded pretty easy. Now it's flat, right up against. You got flat up there? No. All right. We're just snugging these. We're not completely tight holding them down. So when you do your stack up, you're going to have factory bushing. That's going to be your cap on the bottom, your factory body bushing on the top, your block, and in this case it's going to be rock sliders. Now's a good time to go ahead and put your steering boxed spacer in. That's going to go with a longer bolt all the way through to your factory bracket, and then your extension bracket will go through with the bolt through the factory hole on your bracket, the washer and a nut, and then that'll attach with the factory bolt back into the factory hole location. Okay, what we're doing here is you drill a 9/32 hole for the pad for the grill to sit down on. That way the front end's not twisting when you're going over a bump, because that will crease these fenders. And once you do that, the aftermarket ones are not the same quality as the factory, so we definitely don't want to hurt these. So you start out with the 9/32, or you can start out with an 1/8 pilot and then work your way up. It's always encouraged to do that. That saves a lot of your bits. So we got our hole in there. We've got our 5/16 self-drilling bolt with a 13 head. We've got our impact. And it's that easy. It's mounted. One bolt will do it. There's not any moving parts to this. It's no pressure. It's just going to have something for this rubber pad to ride on now that the body is 2 inches up. Alright, so now we're back at the back where our filler neck is. We've already removed it out. We unhooked our vent line from the fuel tank here. Makes it a little easier so you can get to it. So you pull this off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this right here as clean as we can. Gonna make sure that's 2 inches roughly. Use the new provided hose clamps. Alright, so that's going to be your final product. That's got your 2-inch spacer in there. You just want to make sure you sink it down enough to where you got it clamped, where it's not going to come off, because this is your fuel. Okay, now we can take this end, go ahead and, this end, and go ahead and put it on here. Put it back up in here. We'll go ahead and connect our vent tube. So this is what your finished product is going to look like. It's got your new clamp, new clamp, new clamp with your extension in there, and then your filler is back up here where we can go ahead and reinstall our 4 Torx bolts. So now we're going to start the install of the fender flares. These aftermarket fender flares have a double-sided tape edging that goes around it that's provided with the kit. It's going to have a seat for your screw, they're machine screws, Phillips head, and a chrome cover that our customer has opted not to use. So you're going to put your bolt through the hole of your fender flare. Your rubber spacer is going to go in behind the fender flare, and then it's going to screw in the back of the fender. You'll have a nut, and these are the same thread as the factory bolts so you don't have to change your nut plates inside your fender. Now we're going to start the installation of the Odro front and rear bumpers with integrated hitch for the rear and D-ring shackle mounts. And then we've got the D-ring mounts on the front with integrated winch plate. We're going to start with the rear just because it's a little bit easier and there's a couple more goodies that's going to go on the front bumper. So that tab goes underneath and then it bolts straight up just like that. It's going to go all the way up.
I'm going to go ahead and get this winch installed. The customer did have a very large worn winch on the Jeep when it came in, but it's not going to work with this new bumper without modifying the bumper, and he doesn't want to do that. So he opted to go with the Ironton 12,000 pound from Harbor Freight. He's got several other Jeeps that he has this winch on. It's a pretty good winch. I mean, it's 12,000 pounds, steel cable, comes with a Fairlead solenoid, wired remote, and all the hardware that you need. So I'm going to get it installed and then we'll go from there.
So now we're going to address the pretty extensive install of a snorkel. And this is for a TJ body style Jeep, 6-cylinder. The 4 cylinders are different because they have a different air box. So there's two pieces that will go onto your airbox whenever you have to modify your factory airbox for this snorkel. So this is your block off plate. This is going to block off the front of the airbox, which it's actually going to go on the front of the airbox like this. Use the provided rivets. This is going to go on the side of the airbox. That is what your flex tube is actually going to go between this and your actual snorkel itself. So it'll attach to here. This kit comes with absolutely everything that you need. It's got your windshield mount, your grommets, if you got a different size in here, of course the snorkel, and stainless hose clamps. That's very important. Rusty hose clamps look terrible. I've seen a lot of Jeeps with them. And then also your zip ties, just if you have to zip tie your actual tube out of the way. All the hardware, stainless hardware. So we'll get started and get the factory airbox out. We'll get it back on our workbench so we can show you all how we need to modify it. So now we'll unclip factory airbox. We've got 5 clips. Unhook your breather hose. Set this out of the way for now. This has a K&N air filter, which it's going to be using this factory filter. Now with this airbox, there's going to be 3 bolts that bolt this on. And they're going to be 5/16 bolts. And they're going to be tapped right down through the fender. Okay, so now we're going to show you how to take this snout out of the front of the airbox. It's got teeth in it right here, and there's a wide groove right here. So all you got to do is turn it, and line up that groove, and it slips right out. You'll notice it's got drain holes in the bottom of this box. One in the bottom in the front, one in the bottom in the back. Those will definitely need to be plugged up, because with a snorkel, this customer intends to go through some deep water. You do not want to have water in the bottom of your airbox because it can get sucked into the motor. So you've got your block off plate. It's going to go just like this. Drill your holes, put your rivets in, seal around it. Snorkel adapter. It's going to go right there. You're going to have to cut your hole for your inlet. And then rivet everything together. So let's cut some plastic. We'll get back with you. So that'll be your final product. It doesn't have to be perfect with the template, as long as you've got plenty of airflow going through, holes lined up, you've got your duct that goes in there. In this step, we applied our RTV gasket maker to the back of our duct adapter that goes into our air box. If you don't have a set of these, I highly recommend it. You can get these off Amazon, eBay, anything. I think it was 130 piece for like 60 bucks. Comes with a set of Cleco pliers and all different size Clecos. You've got number 40, which is 16th, 30 that's 8th, 21, and then 10. So the 21 is roughly going to be about a 3/16 and then a quarter. So definitely highly recommend if you're going to do any kind of fab work. It's always better to have the right tool for the job. Now what that's going to do is that's going to hold that on there. That's not going to go anywhere. That way when you put your rivets in, you can take these one by one and put the rivets in. Alright, so this is the most difficult part of the snorkel installation, is cutting a big gnarly hole in what is a perfectly good fender. And there's no real good way to start this. We've got a paper template that is provided with the snorkel. Of course it lines up just like that, one hole, two hole. So you're going to take we use a hole dozer Milwaukee 2 7/8 hole saw, and of course the hole is not completely round when you put the snorkel flush against the fender. It's actually going to be somewhat of an egg shape, so there will be a little bit of tweaking that you will have to do with this install, but this gets it pretty close. Then you can open it up with a drum sander. So now that we've got our hole in here, not really worried about this because it's actually going to be oblonged. Like I said, it's going to be somewhat egg shaped. So we've got our 2-inch drum sanders that we're going to use on a die grinder to open the hole up this way and this way. That way it can have the proper clearance to set as flush as we can get it. It just makes it a little bit nicer finish. So now that you've got that fitting the way that you want it, to make sure it's not binding up on the door hinge and also not hindering the door from opening, because your window frame, if you've got your snorkel back too far, it will hit the window frame. Also, there's a notch back here for your antenna to fit down into. So once you've got the fit that you like, and it's nice and in there, it still needs a little bit of tweaking. Once it's in there, fits flush, then you're ready to go ahead and drill your 2 mounting holes and mount the bottom of your snorkel. Alright, so after you get your hole cut out and clearanced for the bottom part of your snorkel, and you get your 2 mounting holes where they need to be, test fit your snorkel, you can go ahead and bolt your snorkel down, and then this bracket here mounts to the windshield frame itself. So up in the top there's an inner structure inside here. That's why it's got 2 sheet metal screws that are going to go in the bottom, and you're going to have a rivet pulled in the top to hold that bracket. So you want to make sure when you're fitting this that you fit it enough to where you can still have your door open and closed. It's not going to catch the head of the bolts that go through that bracket. So you want to make sure that you're going to clear the head with this opening here, because your door is going to fit tight in there. Alright, so now what we're doing, we've removed the battery tray support out of the passenger side of the Jeep. It's right underneath the battery tray. So this has to be clearanced for your tubing that goes from the snorkel to the air box. It's a flex tube. So in order for this to go through here without rubbing and chafing, because you definitely don't want a hole in it, that will be very bad, we've got to cut this out to clearance for that tube to go straight through this, and then we'll install it back in the Jeep. Alright, now we've got our battery tray. We went ahead and got it cleaned up. We painted it just because you'll never see it again after the battery tray's back in it. So you've got your flex tube that's going to come and pass right through your battery tray and up. So at this point you want to go ahead and put your vacuum box back in. This is mounted to the fender underneath the Jeep. Well, underneath the battery of the Jeep, sorry. So we found that with this particular Jeep, the other Jeep, we were able to mount it right under the box on top of our tubing that goes through the battery tray. On this one, we actually relocated this box straight to the firewall right here. There's nothing on the inside that can hit. Your air box and everything is up here. So get your vacuum line plugged back up. We're ready to set the battery back in. Alright, so now we got our air box bottom half bolted back to the inner fender. You will have to space this up because where this goes, it's really hard to clear the alternator. Even with the 2-inch body lift that we have on this, there was still a little bit more modification needed to be done as far as spacing up your air box. So when you space up your air box, you might have to put a slight bend in your grill support rod to clear your outlet for your airbox top. So we've got this nice and secure, everything's good. Our flex tube is bolted to our inlet, our new air inlet, so that goes straight from the snorkel right in there, so you got fresh air coming through. You always want to make sure that you don't put it in the top of the box, because that does absolutely nothing for the quality of air going into your engine. So when it goes through the bottom, then it's going to go through our K&N air filter, and then the air gets sucked through the top into the engine. So we're going to go ahead and put our top back on. This one's always a pain to get to because your fuse block. We're going to run our crankcase vent back to our PCV valve. And at this step, it's probably going to benefit you more to go ahead and put a small hose clamp here and a small hose clamp here, just because you're going to have a little bit of movement with that. That's pretty solid, but your engine's going to move when it torques. So I highly recommend you put some hose clamps on it. Well, this is our finished product of our snorkel. We've got everything all buttoned up, everything done. We got to remount his high lift jack back on his hood. We're going to stick the wheels and tires on it, and we'll get a final cleaning done, get everything back. We'll get some pictures of it, do all of our stuff that we do here, kind of a show and shine kind of thing before we give it back to the customer. Alright, here she is, final product of our painstaking modification of this Jeep. It's been a pretty difficult road trying to get everything done in the 3.5 days that we had to get this thing done, and pretty proud of the finished product. So we're gonna go and detail it and get it back to the customer and see what his reaction is.